Hello again, my name is Mr. Brian Bevan, and today I am going to be explaining as to why I feel Kahoot is absolutely necessary to have in all classrooms for students to use and for teachers to use to be able to have for students to review for their assignments. So, if we can get started here, we are going to be going to slide one right from the beginning. And the purpose of Kahoot is to review for absolutely any assessment that you will be giving, as an educator or as a paraprofessional. You could start with a homework assignment if before we get into any sort of quiz or test review. You could start with a homework assignment, and you could assign this to your students. Uh, Assuming they have a laptop or computer at home, but they can also use their cell phones, which most students have these days, which is very, very cool because Kahoot has an app in which you can place the review that you place on the website that is good through the apps. So, but you just have to provide them with a login, a username, password that gives them access to this little quiz. It could be as short as 5 questions. You can make it as many questions as you want. And students can do these at home, whether it be on the computer, whether it be on an iPad, whether it be on a cell phone, which most students have access to these days. And that makes it really, really easy for them to avoid the simple paper and pencil assignment, which students are traditionally used to doing, and allow them to be on the technology that they become so accustomed to nowadays. Another key part of Kahoot is that this is geared towards almost any learner possible. Visual learners, they're seeing it right in front of them, whether it be on their phones, on their iPads. If you're using it in the classroom, you can also project it on the smartboard, which many classrooms have nowadays. If you don't, then that's still okay. Again, iPads, laptops, cell phones. Most schools have access to those nowadays, so there's absolutely no classroom in which we can't get this to use in, which kind of makes it even better for all learners. This is also good for auditory learners because Kahoot also has not recognition, but voice use in there where you can hear them repeat. You could hear a computer repeat the question out to you. There's many sounds as to when you get the question right, and also if you get it wrong. So the auditory effect is also there, and the kinesthetic learners. They have to go to the laptop or go to the phone or go to the iPad, use their hands, a hands on learning experience, and be able to use the technology that's provided to them and be able to click the right answer. Well, hopefully the right answer. And this way they're allowed to participate in all of the assignments. And overall, I believe this is a really fun activity as compared to the traditional review where you give out a paper where they have to complete the review by paper or pencil. This is a fun activity where students can compete individually or compete in groups against each other. If you would like, or some teachers decide to use bonus points for whoever wins as a bit of positive reinforcement for whoever wins the game itself. And I think it's a little more fun than a traditional paper and pencil review where everyone can get involved and the review is still the same questions as if it were paper and pencil, except there's a little more competition and it's a little more interactive as compared to your traditional review. So if we go on to the next slide, how does this tool actually support most schools' views of technological integration? Well, as I mentioned before, the review game is shown up on a smartboard that most classes have. And if you don't have a smartboard, then this can be used through the technology that's provided to most schools, whether it be an iPad, whether it be a laptop, whether it be the students' cell phones. If you allow them to use it, which you kind of have to be careful with at times. You may have to walk around the room to make sure that they're not doing anything else with the cell phones that students do nowadays, whether it be text messaging or on their social media accounts, to ensure that they're on the Kahoot game. But most Kahoot games are timed per question, so they really won't have time to go on any of these things. And you can tell how many students answered the questions. So say there are 30 students in your class and you see only 29 answered, and it's consistent 29, then maybe you have to take a walk around the room and see which student isn't participating. So cell phones can be a little tricky at times, but I also believe it's a tool that all students can use, and that way when they're on their cell phones, that they have it right in front of them. Each student has one nowadays, it seems. So specifically geared toward the middle school and secondary levels, cell phones can be very effective for this. And if you want the students to give them a chance to really design their own review game, which I think is very, very good on the high school level specifically, you could have a group of students you could put them in groups of 3 or 4 and have, for one unit, have one student, or have those group of students design the game, and then the next unit, the other group of students design the game and the review game going off of the questions that they've learned throughout the unit. Now, obviously, they don't have to run these questions by you, the educator, but in the end, I believe it gives them a chance to explore the Kahoot itself, use the technology that's provided with Kahoot and that the school provides, and allow them to really practice the use of these tools and end up creating the review game that the whole class gets to see. Kahoot also, again, provides an assortment of technologies. I mean, it's not just review games. There's different sorts of challenges that students can use that is widely available throughout the tool. And overall, I think it's just a tool that fits not only for teachers, but also fits for students. It's very time-saving. There's not a lot of paper and pencil grading that's involved. And I also think that, again, we're moving along in the technological era, and Kahoot is just one of those tools that keeps us progressing forward, especially when we're trying to review for assessment. So we move along to the next slide. The age range that we use this, and what kind of accessibility do we have? So Kahoot, I believe, is very good for all ages. Elementary, it's very colorful, lots of cool sounds that they really, really enjoy. And it's for the reviews for even the most simple of things like basic arithmetic, English learning, and the books they're reading, for very, very simple purposes. For middle school, I mean, as you move up in grade, it becomes a little more advanced. You can use more advanced questions, and you could start to get the students into started creating their own Kahoot game. But high schoolers, you can absolutely get, I mean, the review game aspect of it is for all ages, but as you get into the upper grades, you can allow the students to assess that everything that Kahoot has to offer and use it to their own advantage, which the high schoolers can do a little better than an elementary would, obviously. But overall, I believe this is good for all ages. Again, student creation, I wouldn't really recommend unless it's for grade 6 and above, because especially for kindergarten through 5th grade, a lot of them are just getting into the computer technology and may not know how to use it totally properly. Even 6th grade might be pushing it a little bit. But I've had success with 6th grade myself, and they ended up doing it pretty well. Not as good as a high school class would, but it's good practice for them to start to get into. As far as accessibility for teachers, there's a wide amount of technology that you can use to use the game for. Again, I mentioned the smart board that you can project on the classroom, that the entire class can see it and play in groups, whether they play in groups and they have the students write it on a whiteboard, hold it up the traditional way. Or if the entire class is gathered around one cell phone or one laptop, they can answer the questions together. Or if you want to do it individually, then each student has a laptop, each student has a cell phone. But the accessibility for teachers is very, very, very good, and definitely one that I'd recommend for all teachers to have. And again, the availability for students, same thing. I mentioned before, it's available on their laptops, on their iPads that the school may provide, or maybe that they have at home, or on the cell phones where they can download the Kahoot app, and there is a Kahoot app, and they can do these challenges that the classroom or the teacher assigns, and avoid the teacher having to grade every single review paper to ensure that the student has it right. The students can see the results automatically. They can see what they got right, what they got wrong, and the teacher sees these results and can kind of gauge exactly where the class is as a whole in terms of the review. As we go on to the next slide, we see the software required for this, and this is kind of just a little bit of what I've been saying before, what kind of software is required for this. Smartboard that many classrooms have, as I mentioned. The games are projected up on there, and that way the entire class can see it, so there should be no issue in terms of being able to view it. And if there is, obviously you move the visually impaired to a point in the classroom where they can see it more clearly. Laptops, if each student doesn't have one, then you can do group games to ensure that each group has a laptop that they can play the game on or complete the challenge on. If your school doesn't have laptops, and iPads are the option, or if your students have iPads at home, they can use these iPads to be able to complete the challenges, complete the review that you assign to them. And again, cell phones are a little more on the tricky side, but especially in classroom use, to ensure that these students are completing it, because students like to kind of daydream, go off on their own tangent, and maybe not actually play the game or do the challenge and do what students do on their cell phones. So that's one that, I mean, if absolutely necessary, you can go for that. I think if laptops or iPads are available, and this is for in the classroom, then you use those. Or you use the whole traditional whiteboard where they hold up their answer and you click the answer and it shows if it's right or wrong. So cell phones are, again, in class are definitely a little more tricky. So we go on to the next slide. As far as the support the Kahoot offers, and I offered the link that you see on the slide in front of you, there's a support page that actually has any question imaginable that you might have. And I tried to think of even questions way out of the box. And of course, Kahoot did have an answer for these. You may have to go outside of the frequently asked questions to find some of these, to find the answers to some of your questions. But nonetheless, any question you might have is definitely available on the support page on the link that you see in front of you. There's instructions provided for exactly how you want to set up the game, and this is good for both the teachers and if you choose to allow students to create the game. The instructions are pretty straightforward, pretty simple. They can design it the way they want, the colors, the background design, which I think is pretty cool because some students may want to design it differently than other students, and especially in middle school, might mean a little more than you think for to have them design it the way they want. They think it's cool, or it kind of shows the colors they like, the design they like. It also shows in the support section. It also shows the differentiation options, how you can kind of cater to the auditory, the the visual, the kinesthetic learners, and figure out ways to make the game more accessible and better for them. And the instructions on the app that you download, that there's instructions for that on the support page. And if you have any issues with the application, it's a little different than the desktop version, but any questions you might have regarding the app, that it's all answered for you. I was actually very, very impressed with the support page of Kahoot, and I think anyone who've used the page will be too. It's very, very good, very straightforward, and gives you the questions to any answers, or the answers to any questions that you may have. So we go along to the next slide. So a lot of these new cool technologies that we have nowadays, they usually have some sort of cost. Cool part about Kahoot is it is free, which is awesome. Kahoot is free of charge. Now, if you want to use it in the workplace outside of school, say administrators or the higher ups in the school want to use Kahoot is for a little bit of a review in terms of protocol, then it's maybe more useful for them to give a little bit of money. But as far as the student use goes, and the teachers using it for using it for the benefit of the students, it's free, which is cool. The ads that you might see on the Kahoot website kind of defray the costs of Kahoot, which is great for the benefit of the students. They keep it free, which I think is pretty admirable overall. There's content owners that Kahoot, the company, has partnership with, that also defray the cost. So in the end, what more can you ask for? This is basically a free tool, a free app that you can go and put your assignments on, put the review for the assignments on, and allow students to do the assessment at home, and you can kind of see where they are as compared to doing it in class, or doing a final or doing like a small review in class, and they can get this done at home, and it saves time in terms of grading and all the papers that you may have to use. So as we move on to the next slide. So again, kind of a review of, so how can Kahoot be used in the classroom, and some of the stuff I mentioned, the review games. That's commonly what it's more used for, is reviewing the material that you've gone over in the lesson or the unit, and you can kind of do it in a game fashion, or you could do it in a singular review, or you can do it in a group review, which, the option is yours. The content standards that you set out, you can make sure that no matter what state you're in, there's always going to be content standards. Social studies standards for myself, I live in Pennsylvania, so the Pennsylvania standards, I make sure that some of the questions kind of revolve around the standards, and it shows that you're hitting those standards. So if it happens to be a day where you're getting observed and you want to use a Kahoot game, and you have the lesson plan with the content standards on there, you can show in this game that. Obviously worded a little differently, but you can kind of show that you're hitting the standards and you're making sure the students understand the material in line with the standards that you were assigned. It's also going to be used as a refresher. A lot of reviews are just refreshers themselves, but you could do this every single day in your classroom, where the last 5 minutes of class, you maybe have a quick 5-second refresher of the 5 most key points that you thought about in the class. And you ask the students a question, typically 15 seconds per question, and you can kind of see if the students kind of learn the material, master the material from the class overall. So the objectives that you set at the beginning of a lesson as well, these games, different challenges, can be used to show that we hit the objectives. As I mentioned with the refresher kind of hits on the 5 key points, objectives of the class if you choose to do 5 seconds. And at the end of a unit, you can make it 15, 20, 25 questions, however many you so choose. And this helps, make sure that you achieve the objectives that you set out for at the beginning of the unit. So we move on to the final slide. Just a reflection overall of the entire app itself. Review is important on a daily basis. Every class, specifically me, and I would hope every educator does the same if they had the time, go over the most key points in class. I know before I knew of Kahoot, I would always ask at the end, any questions, and there'd usually be a couple questions. And now I can just, kind of put this on the questions I think they may struggle with a little more. I can put this in the Kahoot game or the Kahoot challenge. Or if I see there's a question that everybody seems to have, then I can remember that for later and then put it in the in a Kahoot review game at the end of the unit. So many different games, different challenges that Kahoot has to offer. You have the multiple choice, the true false, different overall challenges that students can complete either for homework or on their own personal time in class if there's some extra time at the end. The opportunities that Kahoot has to offer are endless, and which is why I think that every teacher should have it in their technological tools somewhere saved on their computer, and also every school should recommend their teachers to use. The immediate feedback. You don't have to wait, the 1-2 minutes it takes to grade every single paper, and then, for the entire class, you have to grade every single paper, and at the end of it, you have to kind of go through and see how everyone did as an average, as a class average. Kahoot has immediate feedback, so you can see everything right away. You can see the question that students got wrong the most. You can see where the areas where everyone seems to be struggling. So having that immediate feedback, it saves so much time that you may not have, because us as teachers, we are very busy, whether it be with graduate classes outside of school, dealing with meetings, IEP meetings. So this is a great time-saving tool. So many the pros with this, everything that I mentioned throughout this entire slide. I mean, obviously there's some cons again with the cell phone use. Maybe multiple choice questions aren't exactly how each student wants to describe things. Maybe you have some students that are essay writers, open-ended question writers, and maybe this isn't for them. And that's understandable. Some students like to answer questions as compared to others, and that's something that maybe Kahoot in the future will be able to offer. You could type in the essay that students would like to write. But with any tool, there's going to be some cons, and sometimes you have to be flexible as a teacher, and maybe, for essay questions you want to put on a test, you have to maybe stay away from Kahoot for one lesson and have students practice their open-ended skills, their essay skills, and answer, a more critical thinking of a question that you may not be able to put in Kahoot. But overall, I think this is just a great app. Great app in terms of having fun and the friendly competition. You don't want to let it get to a point where the students are being ultra competitive against each other, but it's a fun app. It's more fun than your traditional review of you reading off the test that you create and asking them the questions. This is a competition where points are involved for how quick you could answer the question. It gives students a chance to have some fun, especially for something as pressured of a test that's coming up, might be stressing out a little bit. This is a chance to just be cool, calm, collective, sit back, and just play a fun review game that they may not get a chance to play all that often. So I hope you guys will consider Kahoot to have in your classroom more often, and it's something that I use every single day almost. So that was my presentation on Kahoot, and I hope you guys enjoyed it.